that are difficult, that are causing resistance. Hello, everyone. We are live on YouTube. Welcome to Wellness Coach. My name is Stefan Ravalli, host here at Wellness Coach, and also a meditation mindfulness teacher and content creator. And I am joined today by Suzanne Jewell. Good to see you, Suzanne.
Good to see you as well. Happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday. So excited about today's discussion on resilience as a practice to aid innovation as an entrepreneur. And before we begin, I remind everyone here to please use those interactive features on the app. Use the question box, the Q&A box, and the chat box to post anything that might come up, questions or comments, or raise your hand, and our moderator, Cody, will enable your mic, and we can talk directly to you. And just a note that these features are not available on YouTube, only on the app, which you'll have to download at the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store. Okay, Suzanne, did you want to start with a meditation to settle us into today's practice?
Absolutely. So I'm going to invite everyone, as we do, to take what I call a dignified seat. And the way that you take your seat is how you meet every moment, whether this moment is a moment of storm or a moment of calm. Get your body in a pose where you are actually with your feet firmly on the floor. Let you have a strong back and a soft front. Let your shoulders drop back slightly so that the chest and the rib cage are lifted just a bit, so that your heart is open and your lungs are able to be filled. And let's just take a moment to arrive. And in this particular practice that is going to be around what it means to have the ability to bounce back or bounce back ability, I'm going to ask you to bring into your awareness, your mind's eye, a recent experience that was kind of on a scale of 1 to 5 at about a 2.5 of challenging. I want you to bring this experience, and I want it to be something that you have actually worked through already, but you're going to retouch your capacity for bouncing back by looking at this and going, okay, maybe this was an unexpected deadline that got moved. Maybe this is an experience where you're in your home and you found out there's a leak in the roof. Things that may have shifted outside your control, not traumatic. But as you're in this experience, because you have actually worked through it, I want you to remember how it first felt as a challenge. Now I want you to bring into your own awareness, your own internal compass, how you found your way through. Maybe you asked for help from friends. Maybe you sat quietly and decided to sort of let a solution present itself. The point is to drop into something that you have done, that you have actually made your way through difficulty. When we retouch these kinds of experiences, we actually deepen our ability to be able to bounce back the next time. Kind of give yourself credit. Wow, that's right. This might have felt really insurmountable. Oh, but I found my way through. I'm okay. And in my okayness, maybe something showed up that was unexpected. Was I open to that unexpected experience? Was I willing to see something I did not see at the very beginning? How did it feel to open my mind and my eye with awareness to other possibilities? And now remember how good it felt to have made it through that difficulty. Kind of reminding yourself with a little bit of a pat on the back, wow, that looked really rough, but I made it through. we often don't practice our capacity to have grit, to actually be in a difficulty, to stay present, and to recognize that when we made it through, we might only remember how hairy it was, but we forget how innovative we were. And as you open your eyes and come back into this space, thanking yourself for the fact that you were able to see things differently.
Thank you for that, Suzanne. And welcome to those of you just joining us. Hello, Dee and Eric. So excited to have you here. Let us know how that practice was for you. And Suzanne, I'm just curious, before we kind of get into the meat of today's topic, any experiences that came to mind for you that were challenging and your bounce back ability that got you through it?
You know, I really have come to find out that I have way more grit than I thought I ever did. And whether it's being, I will share, when I was in the television business years ago, I happened to be traveling to Colombia on business, and I was in Bogota, and I was on my way to Cali, and there was a transportation strike in the country. And as I was walking through the airport to get my way onto a plane to leave, I realized that the only way I was going to get out of Bogota, where the transportation strike was happening, was to be quick on my feet. And rather than going to the gate for Cali, to go to the gate for Medellin. Thank God I speak Spanish. And in my ability to look at, okay, what are their other options? What else is here and what is possible? I literally was able to fly out of a fairly unsafe circumstance and get myself to a place of safety. Not everyone has something happen that might be that kind of physical challenge. But after I did that, I went, wow, there was no one else there. I was able to depend on my own clarity of thinking, and I got my way through. And when I'm in something that might be difficult, I drop back into that moment and I say to myself, you've made it through that. You've got the capacity to do something else. The other thing I think that's so important about resilience, and my father taught me this, he taught me how to use a compass. And most people, when we're in a difficult circumstance, our nervous systems start to shut down in such a way that our view is only looking at one option or one solution. But when we look at a compass, it has 360 degrees on it. So beyond just north, there's south, there's east, there's west, and then there's north by northwest, and there's south by southwest. And you realize there's a lot more than meets the eye if you take the time to slow your roll and actually pause. So that's actually one that I've always used as a drop-in for knowing how capable I am to bounce back and have ability to make it through difficulty.
Yeah, and compasses are also what provides a sense of where we are. And I find, during heightened situations, we have a tendency towards disorientation. Yes. And not knowing, who we are, forgetting our capability, forgetting everything we know potentially, and to remain, to still have all those options, but also to know where true north is, I think also key.
Important. It's so important that you say that, Stefan, because the idea of what I call grit, which is how to ground, how to resource, and then how to integrate and track yourself in that experience. So that's how I define grit. That capacity for saying, and it can actually help you if you're starting to have a sense of overwhelm in terms of challenge or difficulty, or you're trying to find a way to innovate, is literally getting yourself grounded in any moment. And if you even experience something that might be intense in your nervous system reaction, like a panic attack, and many people have had that experience, one of the most important things that you can do, like we do when we take our dignified seat, is become aware of any place that something that you are contacting. Is this a soft seat? You can also take a look at something around you, and you can become really clear about naming it. Like there's a bougainvillea bush behind me here, and I can actually become really clear about its purple color and become very present to something in the sensory world. And that will get the mind from kind of doing all of that noise and that monkey mind chatter, and it'll get you right here in this moment.
Yeah, and I'm thinking back to the meditation practice that we just did, and there was this moment where you're talking about, getting through it and remembering how we can get through it and how we have every time. I mean, if we didn't get through every challenge alive, then we wouldn't be here, of course. And in my industry, in hospitality, there's a period in the night where, we're busy, like it's going to happen. And oftentimes there's a period where it's totally overwhelming or seems overwhelming. And no matter how experienced a service professional is, they'll always be like, oh my God, I don't know if I'm going to get through this. It's like, well, I mean, of course you're going to get through this. That's the only option. Unless like you get shot while you're serving, you're going to get through it. And there's always has to be a remembering, because it's really not that, like, I mean, the ultimate consequences are not huge. Like going to be, but they're actually not. Even if things went really, really wrong, the biggest consequences in hospitality are like delays and people not getting what they want and being, frustrated. But ultimately, like the brain saying we're going to die now. And so
Yeah.
so how do we override that, like, brain saying we're going to die when the situation isn't that bad? I imagine that's probably what you did in Colombia to, like, retain clarity of thought.
I did, and I will share with you that there is a gorgeous phrase that Mark Twain often quotes, and he says, there were many terrible things in my life, some of which never happened. And it's literally what you just talked about, which is this idea of we have a capacity, especially when we're in an opportunity where what is being asked for is our ability to rise higher, but the pressure feels particularly evident and compressing on us. Just the radical act of slowing your roll, pausing, create some space. And when you do that, you actually can not only find out, okay, here I am, I'm sitting here right now, I'm breathing at this moment, and you realize, oh, how many times have I actually worked through challenge before? Wow, you could be an entrepreneur, you could be doing a pitch for your raise, you could have had someone actually give you $250,000, you get the memo of understanding or the deal memo, and they back out. And in that instance, your response is definitely going to be, oh my gosh, are my dreams done? They've backed out. Am I never going to be able to engage in building what it is that I want to build? More often than not, we forget that when things like diamonds are actually in the earth, it is a piece of carbon that when it goes into the tectonic plates and is squeezed, that is what actually creates the diamond. The diamond is not created because a piece of carbon ends up on the beach in Miami in the sunshine and it metamorphosizes into a diamond. It's done under great pressure. So if we have the capacity to not only stay present in our difficulty, learn some tools for resilience, and expand our window of tolerance of our discomfort, we actually build greater muscle that is not only our memory and our attention, but our capacity to be able to excel the next time. It brings us closer to optimal performance and flourishing.
Yeah, and we were talking a bit about grit before we went live, and there is this sort of idea of grit as something that is, involving a certain amount of suffering or just like, like rough experience. And I think a lot of people don't love this idea because, okay, to develop, I need to struggle. I need to face discomfort. But at the end of the day, I want life to, I don't want life to be like miserable. I don't want to be like the cowboy who's just fighting off like smallpox and, and all of these injuries all the time. I'd like to like actually enjoy life. So how does grit involve more like less just like, getting through it and more like actually, in an inspired way experiencing these challenges?
So, this is where the idea of really knowing what does it mean to be mindful, and I'm going to use the John Kabat-Zinn definition in my shortened way, how to pay attention on purpose in the moment, non-judgmentally and with curiosity. So you're in this moment that we were talking about, bringing something to mind that felt particularly challenging or constrictive or frightening or threatening. And if you can actually engage not only slowing your roll and bringing some breath into the space, grab that curiosity and look at it and go, how might I be able to be here? What might I be getting an opportunity to learn in this moment? And then the other part, if it does particularly end up being either mentally feeling really tight, or a lot of times the body and the tissues, whether it's our neck or our tummy, learning where do we respond when we're in difficulty, when we can do what is called resourcing. So grit, again, for me, stands for how to ground. So land where you are, remember where you are. This is where I'm at. What's my GPS right now? And then the R stands for resourcing. A little bit of what we did in that practice was let me go to a moment when I actually have made it through challenge. Let me cultivate that. Let me touch it. Let me remember, oh, wow, that was a really difficult circumstance. And I actually made it through. And gee, I met someone who's now a friend of mine that anytime I go to Colombia, she happened to be on the same plane. She and I are now soul sisters. And when she comes to Miami, she shows up. So when you actually have the capacity to see what's there rather than just shut down, because you've built a resource either of breath or of focus, or where am I seated right now, you've offered yourself opportunities to be present other than just, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And that's the old amygdala back here. That's what's called the barking dog when you teach mindfulness to children. That's literally in the back of your brain going, oh my gosh, rah, 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 rah. When you do the breath, you are allowing yourself to actually bring your prefrontal cortex back online. I don't know if anyone remembers in one of our prior sessions, I had everyone put their arm up like this, and you see where my elbow is? This is your adrenal glands. This is where all the adrenaline, norepinephrine comes into your spine. Imagine this is your spine. Fold your thumb into your palm. This is your amygdala, or the fight, flight, freeze section of your brain. Now curl your fingers across the front of the amygdala. That's the prefrontal cortex. That's the more evolved prefrontal ability to rationalize, to logically think. When you have that moment that we talked about, like I was in the airport in Colombia, you flip your lid. Now all your oxygen and red blood cells are going to your musculature. When you breathe intentionally, you actually come back online. You become more coherent. So what you're doing is literally resourcing your brain to think better. If you've ever been so upset that you were like, oh my God, I was so mad, I couldn't think straight, I don't even remember what I said, it's because you couldn't. You actually flipped your lid. So when you do learn how to properly breathe, what you are actually doing is bringing your rational, logical, and executive function back online so that you can build that ability for bounce back resilience.
Wow, that's a powerful illustration. Thank you so much. So useful to kind of understand how we operate as a sort of circuit, but also to just remember to breathe. And I think we couldn't use more kind of cues and invitations back to breath. And that's such a good reason to. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
And I wanted to talk about innovation, since today's discussion has a certain focus on innovation. What is the role of resilience in being an innovative entrepreneur or employee?
The entrepreneurial path that I have both walked and seen and watched entrepreneurs who are the ones that literally do bounce back a lot are the ones who are able to take a lot of hits and take in the information and be able to pivot, dare greatly. I'm going to create this thing, and then fail mindfully. Okay, this didn't work. Now what do I do in terms of pivot positively? If we flipped the script on what it means to be challenged or quote unquote fail in life, and if we contexted that to instead say, every failure is a gorgeous lesson for me to be able to recreate, then we have a whole different context about challenge being something that not only builds resilience in our mind and our mental capacity, but even in our muscles. If you're at all committed to dedication of fitness, you know that resistance is the way that you actually build muscle. So I think one of the most important ones that I would use, and especially if you're in the, whether it's the corporate space, the branding space, or the innovation space, is Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs literally got fired from his own company. And when he went and started again and created Pixar, and then ended up having Apple acquire that and became the CEO of that which he had originally begun, it was those kinds of iterations of being resilient and realizing that he stayed focused on his dream, but he learned as he went along.
Yeah, and not only that, but like Microsoft was like first to the plate in terms of cornering some aspect of the operating system market, and it was really easy to look at it and just say they've won, I've lost.
Yep.
But he said they've won that battle. I'm going to start new terrain to play on, and he found blue ocean on which to make Apple the thing that everything else wasn't, rather than just saying, oh, I guess they won.
Yeah. And he, interestingly enough, I don't know how many people are aware, he was a very big practitioner of mindful meditation. One of the reasons he was so drawn to the clean lines and the no buttons, he had this whole thing about less buttons, gorgeous design. He felt very drawn to that because he also really liked the minimal idea of Zen. And so he used that space to be able to innovate. I mentioned this in the last class we did. Gandhi, in the midst of literally creating what is the step toward Britain leaving the colonial position that they had in India, took one day off every week just to create space so that he had enough freshness, so that he literally had space for ability to bounce back.
So resilience isn't just about continually forging ahead, because we do think of a certain amount of staying power being a part of this, but also in knowing when to go back into the laboratory, back into the cocoon, and recharging ourselves too.
I would share with you the most fascinating, resilient innovation in nature is the caterpillar. The caterpillar has inside of its cellular structure something called imaginal cells. That's literally what scientists call them, imaginal. They know that at one point when they decide to affix themselves to a branch, become a cocoon, and dissolve into a pile of goop, there is something in that DNA that realizes that the process is to do exactly what you said, which is pause and recreate and shift. Those are still the same cells, and eventually be able to come out as a creature that used to walk on the earth that now flies above it. And it takes the trust of the time to be able to slow your roll and create some space and trust the process. That's the other part too. A minor moment of neuroscientific tidbit here is that the average emotion lasts 90 seconds if you don't feed it. When you feed it, you'll create a thought feedback loop, and that will begin the rumination. But it doesn't have to be something that lasts 90 minutes. It can literally last only 90 seconds.
And one thing about butterflies that I learned, I hope it's true, it was from a piece of fiction sci-fi, but it sounded authoritative. If you see a butterfly trying to get out of its chrysalis, out of its cocoon, and you help it, like by making an incision, it won't be able to fly.
Absolutely.
So that is true. Yeah, that's just struggle to get out. To create
that wing push, cracking open that cocoon, that wing, what it does is that force, that resistance builds such resilience that it makes its wings strong enough to be able to actually eventually fly.
Cool. So many good analogies and interwoven tapestries we've been painting. And I guess we're a little bit past 20 minutes now. I guess I just wanted to pass things over to you if you want to talk about and maybe take us through any practices you'd recommend for maintaining resilience throughout all the storm of the day.
I'm going to suggest that we actually walk through grit. So it's ground, resource, integrate, and track. So take our dignified seat and have a strong back and a soft front. And we'll start with the first of the 4 letters of grit. And we're going to ground ourselves right now. Become really aware and present, whether you're in a building, whether you're at a desk. Try to have an awareness of where you are in relation to the earth itself. Are you 2 stories above and is the earth beneath you? Are you literally in a building that is rooted and grounded on the earth? Simply become grounded and become aware in this moment of where am I actually in this particular moment. This is the GPS practice again of geophysical space. We're going to move now into the letter R for resource. And I want you to call into either your heart or your mind's eye some part of you that you particularly cherish, that you know is capable. Call into your awareness something like, you know, you're a quick thinker, or you know that you're really good at assessing a variety of solutions, or you ask really good questions. Appreciate yourself for that resource for a moment. And the I is going to stand for integrate. Remember a time when you actually used that resourcing tool to be able to work through what looked like a pretty difficult challenge. Revisit, retouch a moment of your own resilience. Have some curiosity. Oh, wow. That's right. I was in that circumstance and I asked a few good questions and I found out there was a solution. Now, in your own inner awareness for the T of grit, I want you to identify this as a little bit of a tool. I'm a great questioner. I have really good sight. Maybe I see things other people don't. Maybe I'm the rock in the room. I'm very calm like the mountain. Name your tool of resilience. When we name something, we claim it. And then we can return to it as that tool of resourcing. Now, as you just open your eyes and come back into the space, we literally did that in just a few moments. You can do that standing in an elevator. You can do it sitting at your desk. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Suzanne. You have a great day. Appreciated everything you took us through, and so much clarity and ability to get through what's difficult. So I appreciate it.
I appreciate it as well. May you all live, work, create, walk, and play in a mindful way today.